Are you a PhD, postdoc, or MD interested in transitioning into management consulting? Apply to Link to LEK by March 12th, 2023. What is Link to LEK? Well, it's an opportunity for advanced degree students to get to know LEK and the type of strategy consulting work the firm does through a virtual 2-day program. During the program, you'll network with LEK consultants and participate in a simulated strategy case modeled after the work done by LEK's life sciences team. But the best part of the program? You will receive the opportunity to an early interview for a full-time role with the firm ahead of the general recruiting cycle. Again, the program is open to current PhD, postdoc, or MD students interested in life sciences strategy consulting, ideally with a target graduation in 2024. So again, apply by March 12th. Click the link in the show notes or visit lek.com today to submit your application. Hey, Strategy Simplified. In today's episode, Namaan, who is a management consultant COO, and Lisa, a management consultant coach and former McKinsey consultant, perform an in-depth review of an aspiring consultant's resume to see if it's ready for consulting applications. In the process, they share some consulting resume tips, tricks, and best practices. Namaan and Lisa co-lead management consultants' resume and cover letter editing team, helping hundreds of candidates each year land interviews at companies like McKinsey, BCG, Deloitte, Google, Amazon, Capital One, and the list goes on. There's a link in the show notes where you can learn more about the editing process and purchase a set of custom resume edits for yourself. In addition, this session is available in video format, so you can follow along visually while the resume is being reviewed. The video is available at the link in the show notes. All right, let's get this party started. Let's dive in.
Dylan, do you just want to quickly introduce yourself before we go through your resume?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm currently working on my PhD in neuroscience at Drexel University here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I guess one of the few silver linings for me during this pandemic period and things being shut down was career exploration opportunities. And that kind of is what directed me towards consulting and why I'm doing this and pursuing hard these bridge programs and other things right now. So I'm excited to see what feedback you have for me, and hopefully it's not a laundry list.
Hey, I love it, Dylan. Thanks for jumping on with us and being willing to share your experience and your resume with us. So I'm going to follow the same process that Lisa followed with Alona. And Lisa, feel free to jump in at any point. But let's start with format first. Then we'll move to structure. Then we'll move to content. So overall, I don't think your format's bad, right? Your experience is pretty easy to scan. You've got all the right sections, or most of the right sections. I'll get to that in a second. But I don't look at the resume and think I'm overwhelmed right up front. And that's a good first impression. So that's number one. Now, there are some changes that I would make. So I would want, similar to the way that Alona had her education formatted, that's the way that I would recommend that you format yours. So I would want the degree title underneath the university or the institution, so that in one place I can find everything that I'm looking for. And so what I didn't like when I would just quickly looked at this is, okay, I can see you're at Drexel and I can see that you're at Pfeiffer, but I had to look over to figure out when you graduated and what your degree was. And so make it easy on me by putting the degree title right underneath the institution name. And then from there, if you want to bold the institution and then keep the degree title italicized to have some sense of differentiation there, that's fantastic. And then you can move Philadelphia or North Carolina. You can move the cities over to the right align and have them above the date. So you're balanced. You've got the things that are most important on the left where I'm first looking, right? Everywhere you're applying, we read left to right, right? And so institution and degree title on the left, and then location and dates on the right, which are a little bit less important to me as the reviewer, but still important to have on there. So that's how I would format then everything moving down the resume. So even in the professional experience, right? Employer first, job title underneath, and then location, date on the right-hand side on those same lines. This is more of a personal preference. And you certainly don't have to change this, but I just like having the kind of dividing line underneath the section title. So instead of having the dividing line above professional experience, I would have it underneath. To me, it just makes it easier to delineate which section is which. People differ there, and it's not a hard and fast rule, but if I was working on the resume, that's what I would change. And so I just thought I'd voice that over. Let me just see here and quickly scan to see if there are any inconsistencies. It looks like you've decided to use periods. That's great. So just make sure there's a period in every sentence. I think that I see that. You don't have some entries that are month only and some that are year only. That's great. You mind just scrolling down a little bit more? Okay, fantastic. And Dylan, any question on the format?
No, I mean, I definitely understand kind of putting the important stuff to the left and some of it to the right. I guess I was trying my best to save myself some lines by not having it two lines, one under the other, but I can see the benefit in the adverse. So
I think you've got some space, Dylan. Where I would save the space is you've got a big gap between each section. So that looks like two entries between the professional experience and the leadership experience. I would cut one of those out, and that's going to save you quite a bit of space there, probably to where it's not even going to make a difference, but it's going to make the resume easier to scan. And then I think up at the top, sorry if you don't mind scrolling, the header took up quite a bit of space as well. And that's where I would save a lot of space. Your name is quite large. It doesn't have to be that large. We could save space by condensing the header, by cutting out the extra space in between each section, and then format this in a way that it just makes it really easy to scan it and to get a chronological look at your experience, where you've been and what you've done.
The font looks like it's one that takes up a decent amount of space too, like a Times New Roman or something might save you a lot of room.
Maybe some space there as well. Yeah. Awesome. And it looks like there your address and your LinkedIn is taking up 3 lines. We could have that take up 1 line underneath the name. And there you saved yourself 2 lines as well. So there's definitely places to optimize for space. And I'll just say this as well. There's no need to have your LinkedIn on the resume. I guess if you really want to keep it on there, that's fine. But if someone has to go to your LinkedIn to find out about you when the resume is right in front of them, the resume is not doing its job. And so no reason to have that on there. Okay, so overall, I think we've determined format pretty good. Would make some minor changes, but no kind of real glaring issues with the format. But there is room for optimization. Structure is where I have some more feedback for you. So the order of your sections makes sense to me. Education first, because you're currently completing your PhD, professional experience, leadership. What's missing here is the personal section. And I know that I mentioned that, hey, that's a non-negotiable for us, and I've already mentioned why. But under the personal section, that's where we'd put any languages that you speak, if you speak any other than English, any certifications that you had that are outside of your educational experience. So whether that's a certification in Tableau or Excel or anything else like that you have, you could put that under personal. You could list technical skills there. I know that we talked to Alona about not listing them all at the top of the resume, but you can have a line for technical skills in the personal section. And then the most important line of all, to me in that section, the interest line. So what makes you, you? What do you do outside of school and of work? Right? Are you a foodie who likes to explore Thai restaurants on the weekend? Or, have you run 5 marathons, right? Or whatever it is that makes you, goes on the interest line. And that's really the one line that's, again, going to humanize you. That's going to be the one line where if I'm a reviewer, I'm going to say like, hey, actually, I love Thai food too. Let me see if he's been to this restaurant. Or, hey, right, I ran the New York City Marathon 3 years ago, or, blah, blah, blah. And you can just start, it's an icebreaker for the interviews. And so you want to make sure you've got that interest line there in the personal section. And what I would do then is move the awards and honors underneath the relevant experiences where they belong. So it looks like here you won this Excellence in Student Service Award. That seems prestigious, and it definitely seems relevant, and it's buried at the bottom of the resume. I'd want to showcase that right up front. within the context of your degree. And so I would put that as a bullet point under the Drexel experience. And again, similar to Lisa's feedback for Alona, right? Was there a monetary award attached with it? Right? Is it a department of 300 and you were the only one to win the award? Right? Let me know one of 300 to win the award. That would be really meaningful and would just kind of round out the story that you're trying to tell, which is I'm a top performer and I've been a top performer everywhere that I've ever been. So I'm going to be a top performer in consulting as well. Right? That's kind of like the overall story that we're looking to tell. So I would move those awards and honors up underneath education. Again, the same thing. I'm familiar with who's who among students, but if you've got any kind of metric, again, to let me know that, hey, 2% of university students in the US make that ranking or that list every year, then I'd love to know that. And that's really going to make that stand out. And so just to recap for structure, right, the order that you've got things in right now makes sense up until the end. And so I'd add a personal section and I would move awards and honors up underneath education. And like we've already talked about, a profile is not necessary, so you don't necessarily need an overview section at this stage of your career. I'll pause there. I'll take a breath. Lisa, any insight, or Dylan, any questions?
I was going to say for the personal section, like add a little detail, like even for Alana, if you have traveling, if you have like X countries, so some people have traveled to like 50 countries in the last 5 years. I'm like, that's fascinating. Or like your favorite one, add a little color to it. And that's what will connect to the interviewer. One of my guys put basketball on his resume, but then I was doing coaching with him, coaching sessions. And I realized he was a teammate of Kevin Durant's in college. I was like, oh, so you're like really good at basketball, not just that you like it. Right. So that's a great icebreaker in an interview. So add a little detail to those. It makes them a little bit more interesting.
Absolutely. My favorite one, and I'll never forget this, is, I once had a woman put in her interest line that she once flew to China for 48 hours just to get this specific bowl of noodles and then flew back home to the US. All right. And so that takes being a foodie to a whole nother level. And that's a story I want to hear more about at the front end of an interview. Right. And I've spent extensive time in China. Yeah, I've been in the city that she referenced in that interest line. Right. That we just have a whole different connection now, as opposed to just saying that, hey, like I'm into Asian fusion or I'm into travel. Right. Like include that in that interest line. It's only going to help you and make you be a more interesting and well-rounded candidate.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
We'll be right back after this quick message. How much do management consultants get paid? How much should you expect to make in consulting? The answers lie in Management Consultants' 2023 Consulting Salaries Report. Get detailed compensation data like base salaries, bonuses, relocation, PTO, and much more. You'll get all this data for 90 plus consulting firms. Did we mention that it's completely free? Download the report today. There's a link in the show notes to do so, and you can figure out for yourself what you could make in consulting this year.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Dylan, any questions before we move on to content?
No, I think I follow everything and I agree. So
okay, fantastic. So this is where I think we've got a lot of room for improvement. And so I'll quickly go through just some overall things that I noticed, and then we can workshop a bullet point or two, and then we'll open up the call, the rest of the call, for some Q&A. So in your education, GPAs are definitely high enough. I love it. Any leadership experience that isn't included in the leadership section, so if it wasn't robust enough to give it a whole entry there, you can include in a leadership bullet point. We already have the awards and honors there. And again, like Lisa mentioned, if there are any scholarships that you won, either at Pfeiffer or at Drexel, include those in that section as well. Again, with the monetary award amount, and if you have the info, how competitive it was to get that scholarship. So if any of that applies, I would add that to the education. I would think that as a PhD, there's some scholarship or fellowships that you have won. I would want to see those reflected on the resume. Here, under professional experience, kind of the big glaring gap that I saw was that every line doesn't have a metric. And consultants think in numbers. When we are scanning a resume, we're not reading every line word for word. If we're filtering it for a job application, we're quickly scanning, and numbers break up the words and stop your eye. And so that's one of the reasons that Lisa gave the feedback that all numbers should be in kind of that Arabic numerical format, not written out. In this one case, proper grammar rules don't apply. And so you actually want the digits there so it stops the eye as you're scanning. And we want metrics in every single bullet point. So, for a lot of folks on the call, one of the questions might be, hey, I don't necessarily know how I can quantify the impact that I've had, or I don't know where I can add metrics. And so, a few common areas where you can add metrics, right? If you led a team, how big was the team? If you were on a team, how big was the team? If you were staffed on a project, did that project have $5 million in NIH funding, right? So it was a $5 million project, or we determined kind of 3 KPIs as a result of the project. You may not have been staffed on the project until the very end to know kind of the big outcome, but you have an idea of what you proposed and what you recommended. And in consulting, projected impact counts. So, if you weren't able to see the project all the way through, but this is what we were projecting to happen as a result, you can include those metrics, because a lot of times in consulting, the final deliverable is a projection. So you can go ahead and include that. And those are some quick ways to add metrics to every bullet point. So that was one of the gaps, Dylan, that I noticed. And I think there's some low-hanging fruit here where we can add those metrics. And then similar to what Lisa said here, we want to provide some context, especially in the first bullet point, for what it was that the project was dealing with. So for example, here, as a market research analyst in the Coulter program, can you just talk me through, number one, what that program is and what the project was that you were staffed on?
Yeah, and so this is the one that's I know the most weak because it's tough. I just started it in late January, and so it's not over. I'm still doing it, and that's why I kind of didn't have much results to quantify, I guess, yet until I see the project through. But the Coulter program basically funds startups. They hear projects out from labs who are trying to take their intellectual property and commercialize it. And if they feel the project is commercializable and well-defined enough, they'll give it funding, hopefully for startup funding that would help you move either to a next round of funding somewhere else or help you kind of enter the market. And so my job was to work as a market research analyst to provide the detailed market research about the given project to both the team and to the funding board. It was a sports nutrition product, but I signed an NDA, so there's only so many details I can talk about it, but I guess I can just talk about the fact that it was a sports nutrition product.
Yeah, right. And so you could say, right, advised commercialization strategy for sports nutrition startup by, right, independently performing secondary market research, right, and then semicolon, right, presented market assessment report to project team or to board of directors, right, recommending XYZ, right? And then, so you could then tell me also, right, how large was the board of directors? There's a metric. And then including the potential impact, which is what did the report include or what were you sharing with the board of directors? And so that's how I would reshape that first bullet point to kind of put that more into business terms, give me some context for what it was that the project was doing overall, and then again, ending with that impact or that projected impact. Did I accurately capture what you said in one bullet point? Push back on me if that doesn't accurately represent what the work was.
No, I definitely think so. And I think some of those numerical type things are things I didn't think about because I was just thinking about when it ends, I'd have an idea of whether it was successful or some of the things I kind of, actually did for them. But right now, especially since I'm trying to reach some of these bridge applications, I was just trying to put something together, describing it at the current moment in time. But no, I definitely like that.
Okay, fantastic. And you can even right say in one of these bullet points or in a third bullet point that project is currently ongoing and you expect to present final recommendations in June of 2021 or whatever the case may be. So if there isn't any kind of specific impact or projected impact you can point to, that's another option to just highlight that this is a in progress event or project, but you expect to utilize these skills before it's all said and done. And so that's another option for you there. Okay. I think we've got just another minute. Do you have any overall questions for us as in regards to your resume, or is there another bullet point that you feel like you've been struggling with that we can quickly go over?
Well, I guess a general question, which I know has been kind of in and out of the chat about 1-page versus 2-page resume. And I really tried to, and I think, I can add some things when I rework better of my spacing, but, there was a lot of things I cut out, or there are some awards and honors, things that I can quantify that it's just going to be too much to list under universities or too much to, I guess, I don't know how to condense things, whether it can be moving left to right in different bullets instead of bullets down a line, or just trying to make it all kind of in a sentence type structure. I don't know if you have any thoughts or preferences on that.
Absolutely. So I think there's 2 or 3 questions there. I'll start with the first one. Even though consulting firms, especially for these bridge programs, they say that a 2-page CV is acceptable, your goal should be 1 page. It's what those folks are most used to. And it also highlights the fact that you know how to be clear and concise in your communication without having to say it, you're showing it. And so best practice is always 1 page. And so that's what I would aim for. And so you had the right kind of gut feeling when you put this together. There are a couple of things you can do to add more information while still keeping this 1 page and still keeping the spacing. So number 1, right, kind of build the sixth sense of what's relevant and what's not. There are probably some things that you cut out that are relevant. And I would just include them on one line. If they're all educational awards from Drexel, I would just have an awards line underneath the GPA and just write award, parentheses, like the monetary amount, semicolon, next award, semicolon, next award, and just list them in one line. So it just gives me a snapshot of, okay, hey, this guy's kind of risen to the top wherever he's been, right? And so you could do that for some of those awards and those listings. You could have another line for publications if there are any that are relevant. But things like Dean's List or other things that are honestly quite generic and don't make you stand out from anyone else who would be applying for consulting, you can leave off, right? Role places where you were a member but weren't in a leadership role, you can lead off. So if you were, and again, this ties back to a little bit of what we were talking about with Alona. If you were a member of a consulting club but didn't organize an event, didn't recruit members, didn't interface with firms, didn't organize case prep, you were just a participating member, that's not super relevant. But if you did any of what I just mentioned, right, now that becomes a genuine leadership experience. And if there isn't enough content there to create a full-fledged entry under the leadership section, you can just include a 1-line, 1-bullet blurb underneath your education. And then what you're doing is you're really emphasizing the most relevant and the most noteworthy of your leadership experience in the separate section, but you're still also highlighting that, hey, you've led teams, you've managed stakeholders, you've organized things inside of that 1 bullet point. And so there are number 1, ways to filter what's relevant and what's not. And then number 2, to include them in a really streamlined way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. As we said, I think that's all the questions I have now. I definitely have plenty to work with. So thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, Dylan, for being willing to come on with us.
Thank you for tuning in to Strategy Simplified again this week. If after listening to Namaan and Lisa review this resume, and you're realizing that you might need a resume edit for yourself, go ahead and nab yourself an editing package at the link in the show notes. We'd love to work with you to help make your consulting dreams a reality. Thanks again for listening to the show. We'll catch you again next episode.